Iraq's most senior Shia cleric has issued a call to arms as Sunni-led insurgents sweep across towns. The call by a representative of Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani came during Friday prayers, as the militants widened their grip in the north and east and threatened to march south. The UN says hundreds have been killed, with militants carrying out summary executions of civilians in Mosul. The US and Iran have promised to help the fight against the insurgency. Led by the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, ISIS, the insurgents have threatened to push to the capital, Baghdad, and regions further south dominated by Iraq's Shia Muslim majority, including the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala, whom they regard as infidels at the scene. Feroz Kalani, BBC News. Baghdad fear is the thing that you feel the most as you walk through Baghdad's streets. As the militants come closer, people here are buying supplies and staying in front of their television sets. They remember what happened during the civil war of 2006 to 2008 and are very scared this will happen again. Many Iraqis no longer trust their national army after soldiers retreated from the ISIS advance. Some have even called for people to instead join militias to defend cities and holy sites. It's certainly not the same Baghdad it has been in the last few years. In his sermon at Friday prayers in Karbala, Sheikh Abdulmehdi al-Karbali said, "Citizens who are able to bear arms and fight terrorists, defending their country and their people and their holy places, should volunteer and join the security forces to achieve this holy purpose." As the militants moved on to Diyala province in the east, on the border with Iran, later on Friday, they clashed with Shia militias, Reuters news agency says. President Hassan Rouhani of Iran called Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri Maliki on Thursday and promised that Iran would not allow the supporters of terrorists to disrupt security and stability of Iraq through exporting terrorism to Iraq. According to the Wall Street Journal, which cited unnamed sources, Iran has already deployed 2 battalions of the elite Al-Quds forces of its Revolutionary Guard to help the Iraqi government. If ISIS can hold Mosul and consolidate its presence there, it will have taken a giant step towards its goal of creating an Islamist emirate that straddles Iraq and Syria. It would be the most significant act by a jihadist group since Al-Qaeda attacked the US on the 11th of September 2001. It could also lead to other changes to the borders Britain and France imposed on the Middle East a century ago, starting with the breakup of Iraq on sectarian lines. The success of ISIS can only make the turmoil in the Middle East worse. ISIS is an ultra-extremist Sunni Muslim group.
Kilometers from the capital, Baghdad. It's their second major gain in as many days. On Tuesday, they took control of Iraq's second city of Mosul, many forcing as many as 500,000 people to flee. But as Iraq unravels, chaos what lies ahead for the region. Iraq's leaders are considering their options. Turkey is holding urgent discussions about how to respond to the kidnapping of its citizens from its consulate in Mosul. The government is warned of Hassan Rouhani says his country will not tolerate what he calls violence and terror, but provided no further details about any possible action. Iraq's Prime Minister has long accused Qatar and Saudi Arabia of supporting fighters in Iraq as part of what he calls a sectarian agenda. There's no indication yet as to how the Gulf powers will react to the current situation. The greatest immediate impact, though, likely to be on Syria. Already in the midst of a civil war, any spillover from the latest developments in Iraq are certain to fuel further conflict in that 3-year-old crisis. Well, at this piece involvement here, we're not only talking about them looking at hostages being held at the embassy. Of course, it's a major oil supply and gas supply route for Turkey, which is now under direct threat. We got the Baiji oil refinery being attacked at the moment. This, of course, is a major concern as well for Turkey in this situation.
Mike, I think we are looking at a very chaotic situation. There are conflicts in conflicts. waged by various groups. As we generally know and recognize that there is a general realignment of forces and politics in the region along sectarian lines. And also there's another realignment of Kurdish forces in the region, political forces. There is an autonomous Kurdish administration in northern Iraq. But also now there are some Kurdish forces controlling parts of northern Syria. Besides, more important from Turkish perspective, there is an ongoing insurgency within Turkish borders for quite a long time. And as the Turkey is heading towards very critical presidential elections and general elections in coming months, the tension within Turkish borders are rising, along with tension in the region in general. The critical point from Turkish government perspective is that already the Turkish government has made itself allies of certain groups and enemies of some other groups. For example, the central Iraqi government are not in very good terms with the Turkish government for quite a long time, as is the central Syrian government. For example, the deputy president of vice president of Iraq, Tariq Hashemi, was sentenced to death, and he found a refuge in Turkey, and now he is in a sense talking as if he is congratulating these recent developments, in Mosul, in Tikrit, in somewhere else, and he describes the situation as the success or victory of so-called revolution. So it's very difficult. It's very complicated, complex situation, out of which neither Turkey or any other country alone can find a way out. I believe one needs to formulate a clear-cut strategy based on a clear-cut policy in cooperation with international community.
Well, let's just bring up what is an elephant in the room at this particular stage as well. Many are raising questions about whether the United States should step in to help Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government. He's reportedly asked the US to consider carrying out airstrikes against ISIL fighters. State Department spokesman Jen Psaki says Washington is committed to working with the Iraq government and leaders across Iraq to support a unified approach against ISIL's continued aggression. The US has completely ruled out sending troops back into Iraq, where around 4,500 American soldiers were killed. This was bluntly reaffirmed by Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, who insisted the US military would not get involved in the situation, adding, "This is for the Iraqi security forces and the Iraqi government to deal with it." Well, David Pollock, we've already heard at the United Nations, the Security Council, a very strong attack from Russia. Sergei Lavrov saying that this is a proof of the total failure of the US-led invasion. Already it is being used as a diplomatic weapon by countries such as Russia. What is the US's position in all of this?
The U.S. position, I think, is, as you said, that the United States is going to try to help the Iraqi government defend itself against these jihadis, but without direct U.S. military intervention. And I think that from the U.S. perspective, even more important than the internal situation in Iraq, however that turns out, is the security of U.S. friends on Iraq's borders, which means Turkey and Jordan, and ultimately also the Arab states in the Gulf, even though they're quite far from the current fighting in Iraq or Syria. So I would say that if there is a direct threat from ISIS or from other elements inside Iraq to the security of Jordan or of Turkey or of Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Arab states friendly to the U.S., that the U.S. might actually consider direct intervention of some kind. Not boots on the ground, as we say, but air support or missiles or drones.